this morning. Israeli police say they're treating
good afternoon.
a terror incident.
That's another week gone by. Another Sunday.
Between black and white teachers.
And I've got
It found black teachers
the mail flying in now, and I don't know what it is. Let me have a look.
We've discovered that
classroom teachers that's good. It's just told me I'm live. It's good at YouTube. Hey Google, turn off. Got rid of the noise in the background. So anyway, I thought I'd start this week with how I started, really. I started doing my tree 24 years ago. It's a little bit more than 24, but it's an easy number, isn't it? 24. So my main intention was to try and find information about my father, who I'd never met. And nobody had ever spoke about. Mum had never mentioned him. So I don't know why, but I just thought, right, I'm going to start this, see what I can find about my father from the information I knew. Now, the only information I had was my birth certificate, which listed my father. And so that's where I started, of course. So then I had to decide, where am I going to start the tree? Because I had no idea what I was doing. So I decided that I would just use Google and put in Google family tree and see what it came back with. And it came back with quite a lot of suggestions. And the first suggestion was ancestry.co.uk. So, of course, I clicked on it. And, you know, it's fairly easy, his ancestry, to start, because I didn't want to pay for anything. So I just went for a free trial. So you have to put all your details in for the free trial, which I did. And then I put my details in, my father's details in, my mother's details in. Now, that was all I knew. I didn't know. Well, I knew that I had a grandfather called Henry or Harry, whichever way you look at it. But I didn't know what he was, you know, birth dates or anything. So I just put me, mother, and father. And from that, the first suggestion I got, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm thinking back 20 odd years, but I seem to recall the first suggestion I got was a birth record for my mother. And from there, from that birth record, which I knew was right because I knew her birthday. So from that birth record, I got her mother's maiden name, which turned out to be, she was called Noddle. It's a word I'd never heard, a name I'd never heard, Noddle, but that's what it was. And I added that to the tree. So of course I had another person in my list. And then when I looked again, there was quite a lot of records regarding my father. And all I knew about my father was, I didn't know his birth date. I knew his year. And of course, with a name like George Smith, there was quite a lot of of suggestions that came up. So I knew I was from Bridlington, so I looked for any records, George Smith, that related to Bridlington and the year, and it came up with 4 or 5. And so I thought, well, I can't really get much information from them because it could be any of those 4 or 5 George Smiths. So I looked again at my mother's suggestions, and there was a wedding certificate, or not a certificate, but a wedding record. So I went to look at the wedding record, and it was my mother's name was Connie, so it was Connie Hughes, which was her maiden name. And I'd got her maiden name. I can't remember where I got her maiden name from, but anyway, that was her maiden name, was Hughes. So I had a Connie Hughes and I had a George Smith. Got married in Bridlington in 1935. So I thought, yeah, that must be about right, because, you know, my mum would have been old enough. She wouldn't have been underage or anything. So in popped that one, which put a little bit more information into George Smith. And went back to looking at suggestions. And I went to look at my mum's suggestion for her mother. Hi, Calcilla. And I'm just talking away. So if you want to just listen. But anyway. Oh, sat on the train then. That'd be nice for you. Anyway, where I've forgotten where I was now. Yeah, I was on my mother's mother. So it was my grandmother. And I knew that her name was Noddle. And there was quite a few suggestions for Noddle. And then a suggestion popped up that was not a birth record, a baptism record. So, of course, there you go. Click on the baptism record, because that gives you more information. So I clicked on my mum's baptism record, and it gave her baptism. And it turned out that her mother, this is my mum's mother. No, my mum's mother's mother. It turned out that she was a single woman. So, of course, she had my great grandmother was illegitimate. But it gave the baptism record for her, and it also gave a birth record for her on the baptism. And I knew that she didn't have a father listed, so I couldn't list a father for her, but I added it in. Anyway, and from that one, I got another hit. That was, let me go back. That was not my mother, not her mother, and not her mother, but the mother of that one. So it's the mother of my great grandmother. And she was listed. And looking at the record, I could see that, yeah, that's a 90% certainty that she is my great grandmother. So I added her records to it. Good afternoon, Bibby. Nice to see you, mate. And so, of course, from going from me and my mum in the course of one day, I'd added another 6 people to my tree. So that's how I worked on my tree 24 years ago. And of course, I'd got my father, George Smith, who was on my birth certificate, and started adding his fathers and grandfathers and whatever I could find. And it went on from there. Now, I used to do, when I first started, I used to do maybe a couple of hours a week, just going through records, looking and seeing if they matched or if they didn't match, or what kind of hits I got. And I just started going through, adding all these hits, and my tree was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was really impressed. Excuse me. So I just carried on. Used to log in on a Sunday afternoon, have 2 hours before dinner, and then finish. So after a year or so, and I didn't go on every week, but after a year or so, I had 500 or 600 people in my tree, which I was quite pleased with, because from me only knowing my mother, I'd got through to finding 4 times great grandfather and a 4 times great grandmother and loads of them. And so I just kept on plodding on and plodding on. And over time, and over quite a bit of time, 10 years or so, I'd got something like 4,000 people in my tree. And, I started thinking, wow, this is good, this. And so then I started from the beginning again, looking at me, because there were records regarding me, which I could check and add them to my tree. So I knew they were right. So anyway, it carried on like that. And after about 12 years, out of the blue, I got an email. And this email was from, I can't remember her name, but we'll just say it was from Mary. And this Mary said, hi, I'm on Ancestry, and it looks like we have the same mother and father in our trees. So I sent back and said, I don't think so. I've never heard of you, whatever. And she sent back an email saying, well, on her birth certificate was listed the father that was listed on my birth certificate, and also the mother that was listed on my birth certificate was also on her birth certificate. So I thought, well, this can't be true. There's going to be a lot of George Smiths and a lot of Connies. So we exchanged emails for a while, and I was really skeptical about it. And then she sent back and said, well, have you had a look at the 1939 register? And I had looked at the 1939 register, and I had found a George Smith and a Constance Hughes. Well, she was called Connie Smith, And I looked at it and I ignored it because the people listed on it, I didn't know them. You know, there was 3 children listed. I didn't know them. They weren't any of the children I knew. So I just sent back and said, yeah, I've seen it, but, you know, I don't think it's my mum. So she said, well, check the record. Don't just take it what it says, just check the record. So I went to have a look at the 1939 register and opened up the actual record to read it. Rather than take what AI had told me, I decided to look for myself. And lo and behold, from that, I could see that it was my mother, because the birth date was exactly right, and where she lived was right. The George Smith was right. However, you know, it listed a birth date, but the year I was looking at, and it was right. However, there was 3 children listed, and they weren't right. So I sent back and said, well, I don't think it's quite right. And anyway, after emails back and forth, we decided we were going to have a chat on the dog and bone. So we arranged a call for one Sunday afternoon, and I had a chat with this person. And she told me a bit of her life story. And apparently in 1939, I think, it's either 1939, 1940, her dad, with the 3 kids, had moved to Barrow-in-Furness with another woman who wasn't on the 1939 register. It was a different woman. But she knew that they'd moved. And so I said, oh, well, let's see if we can get stuff sorted. Anyway, looking at records and going through things and talking to each other, it came out that actually the father that was listed on my birth certificate and her birth certificate was the same person. But he couldn't be my father because I was born in 1951. And in 1951, he was living, or in 1950 when I was conceived, but he was living in Barrow-in-Furness with another woman. So straight away, it showed me that the father who was on my birth certificate wasn't actually my father. And I had 3 siblings that I'd never met, never heard of. And so my family of 5 had gone to a family of 8. So from there, we started talking, you know, every couple of weeks we'd have a chat and see if they've come up with any more info and things like that. And there wasn't a lot of info that matched both of us. You know, she'd got all the info for her 3 siblings, or not 3 siblings, but the 2 siblings and her. And I'd got mine. So because I found out that George wasn't my father, I removed him from my tree, which brought a tree down from, I can't remember how many it was, but it was in the thousands anyway. And it halved the tree in one foul swoop because the father wasn't the father as such. So I thought, well, the only way I'm going to sort anything out here is to take a DNA test, which I did. I took the DNA test and waited a few weeks, well, about 8 weeks, I think, before I got this DNA test back. And I got the DNA test back. And according to the DNA, my father was Danish. or it pointed in that direction. 50% of my my DNA was Danish. So, and all of a sudden, I became a Viking as such. And also in the DNA, it gave you matches, but there wasn't any close matches. So I couldn't really get, I couldn't find my father from the DNA listed on Ancestry. But I'll come back to that one in a moment. But what I wanted to stress was taking things for granted that might not be true. Because even though I have a birth certificate that tells legally my father is George Smith, born in 1910. That's legally, because that's on my birth certificate. But genetically is not. So I started thinking, right, if he's not my father and he legged it in 1939 or early 1940 to Barrow-in-Furness, that points to him not being the father of my three brothers that the three brothers I knew of originally. So I've only got one brother who's still alive, still with us. So I got him to take a DNA test. And we waited 7 or 8 weeks for his details to come back. And, there's me sitting, waiting for these details coming back, thinking that, here we go, he's going to come back with the same as me, 50% Danish. Well, it didn't come back as 50% Danish. There was no Danish genes in his DNA, which points to the fact that my father was not his father. And according to his DNA, his paternal line came from up north. It could be Scotland or around that area, because he had a lot of Scottish blood in his DNA. So excuse me. So I decided that I would try and find out how to get more info from DNA. So again, I went back to Google and searched Google for what do I do with all this DNA I've got, and it came back with loads and loads of things, and I read loads and loads of stuff, and I watched loads and loads of videos from people who'd had their DNA done, telling you how to use it. And the main suggestion was to download my DNA from Ancestry and upload it to lots of other sites, because you can upload your DNA to lots of sites. I didn't know that, but I do now. So I downloaded my DNA, and I downloaded my brother's DNA, and I uploaded them separately, mind you. I uploaded them both to quite a few DNA sites. One of them was My Heritage. One of them was my family tree, or there was lots of them. Family tree DNA, 21 DNA. There were lots. I can't remember them all, but there were lots, and I uploaded them all. And then, of course, because you're uploading to different sites, you have to have an account on those sites. And the first email I got was from My Heritage, which came back and said, we've found 29 close relatives. And when they say close relatives, they mean less than second cousin. So if it's a second cousin, that second cousin would mean that we're related through our great grandparents. First cousin means we're related through grandparents. So anyway, so I went on to My Heritage and looked through these matches for DNA on My Heritage, and it turns out that I think it was about 6 matches I knew the names because they were my well, they were all nieces. I don't know why nephews don't take DNA, but they were all nieces. So I went to the first niece and looked at her DNA, and she had no Danish. Forgotten what the word is, but there was no Danish heritage in hers, which means, working backwards, that her father had no Danish heritage, and working that again meant that her father's father was not the same father as I had. So we had another father listed. So I checked that niece's DNA with my brother's DNA, and it turns out that her father's father was not the same father as my brother's father. So again, there's another father. So that was 3 boys, 3 fathers, all different. So then I looked at the next niece on the list, and the next niece on the list was the granddaughter of my eldest brother. And when I looked at her DNA, she had no Danish blood. So again, it meant that my eldest brother didn't have the same father as me. And I checked against my brother's DNA for it, and it turned out that my eldest brother didn't have the same father as my sibling who's still alive. And then I checked against the 2 nieces, and they didn't have in their paternal line the same DNA or remnants of the same DNA, which meant that my eldest brother's father was not the same father as me, my surviving sibling, or the other sibling who died. So I had 3 brothers and myself and 4 fathers. 4 fathers, there's a pun. Anyway, so we had 4 fathers. So out of now the other thing to look at, of course, is on all their birth certificates, my 3 other siblings, their birth certificates all said the same as mine. George Smith was the father, which he wasn't. So it meant that I've got 3 brothers who I knew about, and myself, and then I've got another brother, or a half brother, and 2 half sisters who I didn't know about. They had the same father, which was this George Smith. So we had George Smith had fathered 3 of my siblings, but had not fathered the other three of my siblings. So we had, what, 7 in the family. And out of the 7, no, did we have 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, out of the 7, we had 5 fathers. Now, I've also got a surviving sister. I've also got a surviving sister, and I got her to take a DNA test because and we knew who her father was, because her father had lived with us as a family in Bridlington. So I knew that he was the father of my sister because he was there at the birth. I was as well, but so she took a DNA, and then from her DNA, her father didn't match any of my DNA. So my sister's father, who we knew about, didn't match mine, and it didn't match my next brother, and it didn't match my next brother, and it didn't match my next brother. So we had 1, 2, 3. I can't think how many we had now. I've got 3 brothers, so that's 3 fathers. Mine, that's 4. 3 siblings, that's 5. And my sister, that's 6. So we had 6 fathers in in my tree, which makes it bloody complicated. So, of course, the only consolation about the whole thing was all our maternal line was correct. We all had the same mother, and so all of the siblings had the same maternal line, which was a consolation, I suppose, because I'd done a lot of work on my maternal line, and it was basically true. So I'd spent 10, maybe 11 years digging away, being so over the moon that I'd found so many, and then lost half of a tree and having to start again. And so I started again on my paternal line. And because I've got, you'll have to forgive me because I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head. I have to count them up as I go along. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fathers. So, of course, I had to do a separate tree for each of my siblings. Otherwise, they would get mixed up between me and whatever. So I spent the next couple of years digging in records and God knows what, looking to see if I could find any reference of who my father would be. And through DNA, I managed to find my great grandfather. And the way I found my great grandfather was I had a second cousin, which was my great grandfather's not sibling, child, or child of my great grandfather. So from that, I could work out that my great grandfather's children, and he had 2 sons and I think 6 daughters. So he had 2 sons. Now, one of those sons is my grandfather. Now, it couldn't be the same son as my second cousin. because that wouldn't work. So from my great-grandfather, I learnt of my grandfather. So I've got my grandfather's name. Now, going through DNA and a lot of heartache and wonder and records and God knows what, I found that my great-grandfather had 3 sons. So, which means one of those 3 sons is my father. Now, one of his sons died well before I was born. So that meant that got one of his sons out of my 3. So I'm left with 2 sons. And I know that one of those 2 sons is my father. And digging around and going through records and newspaper cuttings and God knows what, it worked out that these 2 sons were fishermen, and they owned a fishing boat in Denmark, and they used to, what do you call it, drop the fish, or they used to bring their fishing catch to the UK, and they used to unload their fish catch in Bridlington, which is where I was conceived. So it points again that those 2 sons are my father, because Bridlington matches my mother's there, and that's where I came from. So started to try and dig into their stories, and I could find DNA records for them, but none close enough for me to pick out which of the brothers is my father. Now, I think about 18 months went by, and I got a hit on the DNA, and I can't remember which site, but it was a different site. I went to the site, and it was a first cousin, which means first cousin means can't remember what it means now. Anyway, it's a first cousin, so yeah, it means that we have the father in there, I think. I can't remember how it works out. Anyway, it worked out that this first cousin had a tree, but in her tree there was only her and her father. So I emailed them and said, who I am, and I've been researching my DNA and whatever, and got no reply. So I didn't push it. I left it for a few months and sent another message. Still didn't get a reply. So, of course, me being a nosy git, started checking around the internet to see if I could find this person who was my first cousin, see if they're on, Facebook and Instagram and all those type of places. And it turns out she was on Facebook. And looking at her Facebook, what do you call it, her Facebook profile and what she'd been posting, I found out the name of her father and her mother. So I sent an email to her father, just saying that I believe that you're the father of this person, and we're connected. This person is connected to me by DNA. Is she your daughter as such? And he sent back and said yes. So I thought, I'm on a winner here. So I sent back and said, would there be any information you can, you're willing to partake, giving me and whatever? And he just sent back and said, well, you'll have to talk to my daughter because I'm not giving you any information because she's not, I can't remember how he put it. Anyway, he said I had to talk to her to get the info. Now, she doesn't answer emails. And I put a message on her Facebook page and she didn't react to that. So you can't do anything, can you, unless I get on an aeroplane and fly over and confront her. But anyway, so I couldn't get any information from there. So I emailed her mother to see if I could get any information. And her mother said, well, I can't remember how it was. I was adopted and whatever, and she wasn't quite sure of her history, and so I could get nothing from it. So that's where I'm stuck now. I'm stuck with two brothers who one of them is my father. And so I started to do my surviving siblings, see if I could find any information on his tree, but his is even worse than bloody mine, quite honestly. But it means more digging and more digging and more digging and, you know, spending more time. I don't spend as much time as I used to do on my tree, but I am gradually getting the tree don't know what you call it. I'm getting the tree to be more truthful. Because like I say, in the beginning, I was just taking ancestors or my heritage or whatever was saying, well, this is blah, 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 and that's who they are, and adding them all in and giving me loads of people. And then when you look at the records, they're not actually who my heritage or ancestry.co.uk believe they are. It's artificial intelligence is reading the results and not really coming up with exactly what you're looking for. So I started being a little bit more, I don't know what the word, pedantic. Every record now I look at, I don't take it for granted that, you know, what's written is what's in the record. I look at the record to read it myself, and which makes sure that spelling names is correct, date of births are correct, where they were born is correct, because quite often on some of these records, you know, because the writing's not all that cracky, names have been, well, the artificial intelligence has read a name and come up with a different name, if you see what I mean. So nowadays I check every record before I actually add it to my tree. And I think there's about 1,800 people in my maternal line that I got from the start till a couple of years ago. So I started going through all those and checking the records and things like that. And anyway, going through all that, I whittled it down. I didn't have that many ancestors because some of them were wrong. Fact checking is the thing. Got rid of all those. So what's in my tree at this moment in time is right, as far as I can work out. And so really, it goes to show you that you can't take, it's not as easy as it sounds. You know, it seems really great when you start and they come back with all these suggestions and yeah, this is Bob and he's your great grandfather. And quite honestly, is not, because they've got it wrong. The records have been read wrong. So, so like I say, I only have, you'll have to forgive me because I'm just going to show you my tree and show you what I mean. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen. So let me just get rid of that one. So there's my maternal line. Now in that maternal line, I know that they're all correct. All these are correct because I've checked through all the records that we've got for them. And, you know, get rid of the deadwood that are not really there. Now, when I first started, and I don't know if you might not have heard me at the beginning because you might not have been here to watch, but I did say that my grandmother had no father listed on her records. And this is the person I'm on about, Ethel, here. Yeah. And in all her records, there's no mention of the father. But if you look here, you can see that her father was Charles. Now, the reason I know that her father was Charles was DNA, because his, let me just see if I can make it a little bit easier to see. So this is the father, which turns out to be my great grandfather. Yeah. And it's DNA that's led me to that. And the way I got to that was, let me just see which one it is. I can't remember. One of these has children, and those children, two of the children that one of these have got are my second cousins, which shows that that's my great grandfather. First cousin, I think, not second. I can't remember now which they are. But anyway, so that's how the DNA helped me on that one. So just trying to figure out now, because it does get really complicated, my tree, because Amelia Noddle is my great grandmother. Now, Amelia Noddle had Ethel Noddle, which is my, down here, which is my grandmother. And she had her a year before she married John Davison. And we know that John Davison is not the father of Ethel Noddle, because the DNA proves it. So the DNA is pulled in for me a great grandfather that my records will not show. Let me just see if I can get back. So Ethel is my grandmother, and this is her tree. Now, DNA has brought this, the paternal side of her tree, in, and DNA has also helped with the maternal line. of her tree. So you can see that DNA is a key. And if we go back to me, so mine, my maternal tree, which is the bottom part of this, is the same for me as it is for all my siblings. They're my siblings there, or half siblings, as they are. But the maternal tree is the same for all of those. And my paternal tree is this. And I've got that from this Carl Rasmussen, because he's my great grandfather. And from there, I've got various cousins who all come up through him that come down to me. So that one is correct. DNA's showed me it's correct. And then I've gone through records and got these added in. And again, DNA helps, because if I go to this one, let me see which this one is. I think it's my second great grandfather. If I go to my second great grandfather, I have a lot of DNA relations that all point to this one man. And when I say this one man, I mean this one man and his wife. However, there is one or two in there that Peter is the father, and there's another woman who's the mother. So, they're not all exactly right. But that shows you the power of DNA. Anyway, how long have I been talking? So I've been talking nearly an hour, so I think I've done well, considering I had nothing to talk about when I came on. So, Kelsey, love, have you enjoyed your day down in the Big N? Was it good for you? I'm hoping you're going to say yeah. I presume you're still there. I'm saying, oh, there you go. I'm glad it was good. Are you home yet, or are you still on the wheels? Anyway, besides, I noticed in your in the chat that you put that you're going for one of the DNA tests next week. So get in touch with me first, because I think one of the other DNA companies are holding not a raffle, don't know what you call it, a cheaper one anyway. Because it doesn't make any difference which DNA you get, because the DNA is the DNA. It's going to be the same. Oh, nice. Did you go on your own, Kelsey? And I presume you spent the night in the inn. Anyway, yeah. So just let me know when you're thinking of getting the DNA test done, and I'll look and see which has got the best deal, because they all do different deals every so often. I think the one you were on about at £29, I think that has run its course, I think. Oh, if I'd have known you were going accompanied, I could have I could have given I could have given her some clues on where to go around there, because I know it quite well. Anyway, it was next time maybe. So let me get back away from this this tree and go back to me. So it's enough about me. I want to talk about you. So, like I say, at least this time I've managed to come up with something rather than just sit here talking about nothing for an hour on my own with nobody in. So let me just see, before I finish, let me just see if I don't know where to look. Just bear with me. Come on, where are you? Well, I was trying to see if I could find the current price for the DNA test, but I can't. But looking at my tree, it lists upcoming birthdays in ancestry.co.uk. It lists upcoming birthdays, and lo and behold, born 141 years ago today, I have 2 granduncles and a grandaunt and a great grandmother, all born on the same day. Not necessarily the same year, but 2 of them were from 141 years ago. So I think it'd be a bit late for me to send them a card, won't it? I presume, anyway. Let me get back to I can't find it. Don't know where to look. DNA cost. See which one. Okay, right. The cheapest at the moment on DNA is £35. It would need to be a big cake, wouldn't it, for that? For 140 years. But what has surprised me, going off that subject, but what has surprised me as I've gone through my ancestry, how many events have taken place on my birthday, not the year, the day, because I think I've got 3 great uncles and aunties who were born on the same day as me, and then I've got a couple who were married on the same day as my birth, and again, it's not the year, it's just the day. So it seems a popular time in my genetic history, March. So there you go. Anyway, I've come to an hour, and I've only had a couple of people watching, but I presume other people will be watching later, because I've noticed that one or two of my my previous lives have been watched. afterwards. Now, next week, I'll be doing another one next Sunday. If you've got questions, just please put the questions in, either in the comments below or come on the live and throw the question at me, and let's see if I can help you along your way. And I was saying, let's see if I can. I know I can. I'm quite confident in saying that I can help. I've got 24 years of experience on what to do and how to do it. And quite honestly, I'm like a dog with a bone. I can't leave it alone. I have to dig until I find out the truth. So anyway, that's me for today. I've got another live in 2 hours. So I'll say TTFN, live long and prosper, and good hunting.